I was given a Kindle before Kindles were commercially available, just to try out. And I looked at it and I thought, you're ugly, you're kind of clunky, you look stupid. And then, a couple of days later, I got onto a plane to Hungary, where I was going to be for 2 weeks with my 12-year-old daughter, and we realized that she had nothing to read, and probably in Budapest there wouldn't be anything that we could buy for her to read. And between realizing this, sitting down on the plane, and the plane door being closed and taking off, I downloaded a dozen books, enough to entertain her for 2 weeks. Watching how she took to the Kindle, I realized content was going to triumph over packaging, and that digital was definitely happening. But I wasn't completely certain. I wasn't certain that this was the way of the future until I noticed that I could make fonts larger and more readable in dim light. And I thought, that's the killer app. Because normally technology gets driven by the young. But here, it's going to be driven by the Luddites. Because as we get older, our eyes are not what they were. And the idea of a book where you can actually make the font readable is going to change everything. But it wasn't until I went to Manila, very, very shortly after the Kindle had come out, and started talking to a bookstore where they were, as far as they were concerned, the physical book that they were selling was done. Because in the Philippines, everybody was buying books based on price, and digital books were going to be cheaper. That I realized that the future was stranger and more different from anything that I'd imagined. In 1997, I was at a dinner held by the Cleveland Plain Dealer, a newspaper. And there was me and a couple of New York Times best-selling authors, and I wasn't a New York Times best-selling author at that point. I was the weird one. I was the entertaining one that they got in to be weird. One guy was a New York Times best-selling author, not particularly famous, but his books were New York Times. The other was a huge, powerful, important crime writer with a reserved parking place at the top of the bestseller list. And the signing started after the Cleveland Plain Dealer dinner. And I had a line of awkward-looking people who had never been to a Cleveland Plain Dealer dinner in their lives. Goth kids and geeky people and just people clutching comics, and they were there and they were excited. And then for the other authors, there were nice-looking ladies with twin sets and pearls, and there were respectable-looking people. And I thought, that's so interesting. I will never get any of those twin set and pearl ladies. They are not my people. And then the incredibly famous author looked down at a book that was put in front of him by a very nice lady, twin set and pearls. And he stood up and he said, I'm not signing this. Look at this. And he held it up so that everybody could see it. He said, this book was a former library book. Why would I sign this? I get nothing for this. And he sat down, refused to sign it, and started on the person behind him, who had a nice brand new book. And I watched as several of the ladies, the nice twin set and pearl ladies, from further back in his line, went over to the bookstore, bought copies of Stardust, and came and joined my line. Because I'll sign anything. I will happily sign anything. I figure that they like my stuff. They like me. If they can't afford a new book, maybe one day they will. And in the meantime, I'll give them something to love. And in the meantime, I want them to go out and tell their friends that there's a book that they love, and here you go, and look, it doesn't matter to me that they'll give me copies of Good Omens that have been round the world with them, and at some point dropped in soup. And they're held together with sellotape and love. It doesn't matter. What matters to me is that they have the books and they love them, and they'll tell people about it.